Bramer Banking Corporation of Mauritius showing first quarter profit before tax of 7.1 million rupees. Total assets up by 7.8% to 11.7 billion rupees. That's compared with 10.9 billion. So to unpack the first quarter performance, we're joined on the line by Ashraf Esmael, Chief Operations Officer at Bramer Banking Corporation. Thank you very much for joining us today. So if you could just take us through firstly the increase in assets that we saw for quarter one, of course an increase overall of 7.8%. Give us an idea of where you drove asset growth in quarter one.
Yes, thank you for calling. In fact, the quarter one results have been driven primarily from business banking, which is an area where we are giving focus, and business banking mostly on the local and international front. So that's the new area of focus of the bank, and we are driving business primarily from these sides. This 7% approximately for quarter one would translate into approximately 35% on a year-on basis in terms of annual growth equivalent. So it's a very good sign. It's positive, and for us, it's all going well for the future.
So when it comes to solidifying your, I suppose, presence in the business banking space, and we know that Mauritius continues to establish itself as a chief financial hub in Africa, what's the strategy from here on out? I mean, where there's specific areas where you see opportunities for Bramer Bank specifically right now?
I think there's a lot happening in the trade, finance and investment corridor between Asia and Africa these days, and this is where we want to position the bank because there's a lot of trade flows, there's a lot of investment flows going into Africa. We are rightly positioned in Mauritius to take advantage of that, and this is how we are gearing up in terms of our competencies and abilities to be able to capture part of those flows.
Looking at overall, I mean, it's hard to look at the comparable period because you don't exactly have those figures on the statements that were released. But give us an indication of your net interest margins right now across the group, and I suppose you could also drill into the retail side of Bramer Bank right now. Give us an indication of what net interest margins have been doing in the first quarter.
Yeah, I think what we need to understand is that Bramer Bank comes from a historical perspective in the retail arena in the past couple of years, and obviously it's quite competitive in that market, especially on the local front, with two of the major banks here holding more than 70% of the market in retail, in local domestic front, and we've got around 21 banks in Mauritius for a population of 1.2 million people. Clearly, it's very competitive. Margins are very tight on the retail front. That's why we are much more now looking at the business banking side and on the international front, because margins there are much better in terms of between 3 to 6% on certain deals, compared to around about 2-3% on the local front. So it makes sense for us to pursue much more into this area. And as you probably must have heard, I mean, Bramer Bank has also been nominated in the African Bankers Awards for financial inclusion, because we're also present in something called microfinance area. And microfinance is an area which also drives very strong margins, where we will also continue to be present.
Yeah. So